every organization has a specific, if it's highly evolved, it has a specificity to its employer culture.
Yeah.
And that's in need of, that needs to be communicated.
Yeah, like a perfect example, I'll take myself back to like early in my career. This was back forever ago, right? But working in an office every day, coming out of school and getting my first sort of corporate job, there's nothing I knew about what does it look like to work in an office. How often am I allowed to go fill up my coffee, right? What's the
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Small Talk Window podcast. We're on the show floor at HR Tech Conference 2024 in Las Vegas, baby. And we're at the iSolve booth, and I'm speaking today with Yutaka Takagi, who is Principal Product Evangelist for iSolve. Welcome, Yutaka.
Brent, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Folks, you might be hearing a little bit of commotion in the background. It is a very, very busy floor here this year. Pretty exciting. Lots of booths. And iSolve has one of, or maybe the coolest booth. Lots of pink. You can see it first thing when you walk in. Yutaka, we have an interesting topic today to discuss. It's around employee experience, employer culture, employee communication, and we'll get to that real shortly. But maybe you just kind of share with us what gets you up and what drives you in the morning, gets you up out of bed around the world of work.
Yeah, well, I've spent my whole career, which is fast approaching 30 years now, in the space of HR technology and working with HR payroll professionals. And, while the technology's evolved a lot, their concerns of being a strategic partner to the business has kind of always been this ongoing issue. And I think I'm a firm believer that certainly as, things like AI and the skills-based work and the future of work conversations keep evolving, that this idea around how can HR professionals, or people heroes as we like to call them here at iSolve, how can they help those employees have great experiences at work? That question, I think, is the strategic imperative for HR professionals, and I love to talk about it and share ideas about it and debate about it. It's a really interesting topic.
Well, it's really exciting to think about kind of pivoting to that more strategic, more forward-thinking piece of the puzzle when it comes to HR, and kind of moving away a little bit from, there will always be an operational component, but as that becomes more automated and more assisted with AI and these kinds of things, HR should be thinking about this strategic opportunity that they have.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, as a part of the HR Professionals Day, this is actually today as we're recording this, we ran a survey of over 1,000 HR professionals, and they gave us a lot of feedback that that they're hearing a lot of frustration, a lot of concern in their workforce, and they themselves are feeling some of that frustration as well. And the number one area of concern that they hear about is a poor communication inside their organizations. And employees are coming to them, leaders are coming to them in HR to help solve that question around poor communication. And meanwhile, while they're putting out the fires every day, they're not getting the day-to-day tasks done, right? So I think there's an opportunity here where, leveraging AI tools or automation tools can help free up some of that time, let some of those day-to-day tasks be automated, so that task list itself is a little less, that sort of mental load is a little less on HR professionals, and then let them focus on that communication part, because I think there's a lot there in communication that ties to culture and that ties to creating that employee experience that matters.
You bring up a couple of good points. Well, more than a couple, but let's focus on two of them at the moment. So first of all, getting that administrative stuff out of the way so they can focus on higher level things. You characterize it as so that's one. You characterize it as an opportunity. That's a piece of it. You talk about the importance of that communication, to communicate various various aspects of the workplace culture to the workforce. You speak of it as an opportunity, and it is an opportunity, but it's kind of a necessity too. It's a necessity that a lot of, and we're not faulting HR folks at all, because from the survey results, they're overwhelmed. There's just so much going on that's keeping them away from the strategic stuff. But thinking about employer culture, so this is what I want to kind of pose you with. It's interesting. It's kind of funny, amusing to think about this, that you think of, at first blush, employer culture is just something, it's there. You should know what it is. You're working at one place, and the employer's culture, maybe it sucks, right?
Right.
You work in another place, and it seems like it's great, right? But those are more feelings, or just sort of amorphous, or just general vibes, calm vibes, right? About your employer culture. But you have a specific, using the royal you here, right? Every organization has a specific, if it's highly evolved, it has a specificity to its employer culture. Yeah. And that's in need of, that needs to be communicated. Yeah. So can you give us maybe some examples of what, because we've talked about this previously in other conversations. What are some examples of that? Yeah,
like a perfect example, I'll take myself back to like early in my career. This was back forever ago, right? But working in an office every day, coming out of school and getting my first sort of corporate job, there's nothing I knew about what does it look like to work in an office? How often am I allowed to go fill up my coffee, right? What's the.
Hi there, I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
Those kinds of behaviors or norms that I think, 2 weeks into the job, you kind of could take for granted. And so for a lot of folks who've been in the workforce for a long time, that's not something that you really even think about, right? Mm-hmm. And so you take that for granted. And when you do that, I think you can forget to communicate that to those new hires. Mm-hmm. And so particularly when we think about, say, the post-pandemic world, you see these Gen Z workforce in particular. Those are folks who are maybe at their oldest, late 20s. Yeah, they started their careers just recently in the midst of the pandemic, perhaps in a remote environment. Mm-hmm. Like how did they learn what those norms are, right? So we see that reflected in there was over the summer there was a study that the Harris Poll released that talked about. Quiet vacationing, right? This idea that employees are scared to request time off because of the impact that they feel like there's a sort of a hustle culture, or they're afraid of seeming like that they're not interested in work. They're afraid of what taking time off means to their colleagues as that workload shifts to them. So instead of requesting time off, and going through those proper channels, what they do is they quietly take the time off. They don't tell you, and then they just sign in from their phones, check their emails and texts while sitting on the boat or sitting on the beach, right?
Which sounds like fun.
And I'm not gonna say whether I've done it. That's not that's neither here nor there, right? But the question really is is that really helpful to the business, and is that really helpful to the employee? Because the purpose for most of us who have time off policies is we want people to take time off. We want them to recharge, unplug. But that behavior of what do you expect from them in that moment that they're trying to take time off, what are those behaviors that we expect from them? That's something that you have to model, So you want your managers to model that behavior. You don't want managers to be responding to text when they're on vacation, right? And the complete expectation of these are our values as a company. This is why we give you time off. That has to be intentionally communicated, I feel like. And it's something, it's an opportunity that isn't necessarily always taken. I think, again, we tend to push out policies, and we might have handbooks and beautifully written and all that stuff, and we ask them to read it. We ask them to acknowledge that they read it. But do they really understand the intent behind it? Do they really understand the impact of that to the culture of the organization, the values we uphold? I think that's a piece that might be missing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you shared a lot there. I'm going to try to unpack a little bit. So you mentioned Gen Z, for instance, going in for a coffee. The other piece of it is, Gen Z, there's so much has been written about Gen Z, and they approach work entirely differently. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when millennials were new, right? It was a big thing then. But Gen Z might not even realize that maybe there's an expectation around, where you should work from or how often you can go, sort of implicitly or tacitly, like how often you can go to the coffee room to get a coffee.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a need for communication even when you're thinking about the generations and this sort of thing. You talk about this touches on work from anywhere, which is a big deal right now.
Yeah.
So first of all, we were joking a few minutes ago that that must be fun, like sitting on a boat responding to emails. But it could be a lot more fun if you knew it was okay to take a bona fide vacation at a tropical location. Save myself there.
Right.
That would be so much more fun and better for that employee. And and it's really interesting that this is another thing that's occurred to me. Employer culture is, we think of it as sort of this big concept and sort of this deep philosophical thing, but it's also minutia.
Yeah.
It's details.
Yeah. It's those everyday norms of, again, what you might take for granted if you've been working at an organization and it really doesn't take a long time for you to understand what those norms are, right? And so, if you've been as an HR practitioner, HR leader, been in that organization, maybe you work in an office 3 days a week or 5 days a week, and then now you hire someone on who's maybe never worked in an office environment, or maybe they're a remote employee or a flex employee. All those things, I think, change the way they perceive that culture. They change the way they experience that culture, right? So there's that word around employee experience. How did they feel it? How did they understand it? And again, in this world where you have just so much input happening with our employees, yes, we want them to get their tasks done. We want them to use their skills to get the sort of the discrete units of work done that you hired them to do. But how are they understanding, and how do they engage with what working here means, right? Yeah. And what is that experience we want you to have? And that's that. Again, I think that's that. There's an intentional communication path there that I think, again, if you assume that this is going to happen sort of organically, I think you're making a big assumption there.
Well, it will, but it'll probably not, manifest the way you want it to, right? Maybe you could speak to this very quickly. Leadership in an organization. Yeah. It's important to be clear with yourselves as leadership. What is your culture?
Yes.
What is the culture you see?
Yes.
How do you want to guide that culture?
Yeah.
Thinking about it, getting very specific about it, and then communicating it.
And absolutely, right? That is something that leaders need to be aware of, sort of self-aware about the organization, about the culture that they want to create. And then, of course, since we're at HR Tech, I'll say, leveraging technology in a way that allows you to communicate that, right? To create that community inside the walls of your company. And it's also important to make sure that people understand, yes, there is a world outside the walls of the company. Connect what you're doing as a business to the broader community. I think these are all things that this multi-generational workforce are all looking for.
Absolutely. Oh, such great insight, Yutaka. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it.